Hello and welcome to another episode of Addicted to Business. Today we're delighted to be joined by a very good friend of mine and business extraordinaire, Mr. Rob Sayles.
Hello.
Hello,
Thanks for
sir.
being here.
And to my right, we also have a co-host on today's podcast, Stokely from Trendy Grandad. Hello, Stokely.
Hello. How are you?
Very well, thank you. So, Rob, thank you for coming today. Let's dive straight in. We've got 45 minutes to deliver as much possible value as possible. Now, I know you and I could probably talk for hours and hours and hours.
We could. Let's stick to 45 minutes.
Let's dive straight in. The first thing I want to talk about, just very quickly to give the kind of listeners and anyone watching a bit of a picture, is where did it all start for you and why are you here? So what's been the journey and now what are you doing today?
Okay, so my journey with digital started in '96. I was doing my music degree at college, final year, final module, and my tutor talked about this thing called the internet that had just been introduced into the course. And he talked about being able to put audio and video online and share it with the world, and it literally, like, my head just exploded. This is 1996.
Were you born in 1996?
1995 I was born.
So you can imagine.
This is a game changer.
It sparked my career. I went and worked for loads of different agencies, doing loads of different roles for like 10, 15 years, and just fell in love with digital, that place where you can blend creative and technical and share it with other people. And that's pretty much it. Why I'm here now is because you asked me to come.
So
I love that.
more was the fact about what are you doing today in terms of helping clients, because you've been incredibly helpful for us as an agency, and you've done a lot of agency consultancy based on your time in agencies, but you've also got almost 2 or 3 careers because you've got your own agency and have got an incredibly talented team. And in terms of funnels, lead gen, conversion, one of the most accomplished people in our area for that as well. So, so what is it now that Rob Sayles is known for and wants to be known for going forwards?
That's a good question. So Rob Sayles effectively is consulting. So this is strategic consulting work. Okay. I've got 2 businesses.
Sure.
I'm the CEO of an agency, a virtual agency with team across the world. Yeah. And we do production work, as you say, funnels and campaigns, that kind of stuff. Rob Sayles as a brand, as me, is more on the consulting side. So that's working with agency partners or working directly with clients to help shape campaigns and work out best approach.
So the first thing we're going to go into is strategy and campaign strategy, because I fundamentally believe any campaign or any activity should start with a strategy or a plan.
Yep.
Okay, now you've worked with some of the world's biggest brands. A few spring to mind, ClickFunnels, Facebook, jump in if there's any others.
Sony, Fuji,
there we are,
RBS,
right?
Aviva.
Ridiculous. Huge brands.
Yeah.
Yet you've also worked for some kind of brands and some smaller brands.
Yeah.
However, there will be common ground in each, I would guess.
Yeah.
What are the kind of common mistakes or pitfalls you see that all of these are kind of struggling with?
I think when it comes to planning campaigns, and to put it in context, really, campaigns are just simply like marketing projects. You know, when I'm talking about the digital space, a campaign is anything to do with a thing, a project. Yeah. I think probably the most common pitfall that I see, whether it's a small one-man band or a small business or a regional, a national, a multinational, is making assumptions about the audience and about the state of awareness that audience has about your offer.
Okay.
Like over and over and over again, it's the same thing. Oh, we're going to sell this thing to these people.
And the mistakes because they haven't done enough research, or their research is outdated, or where's the challenge?
I think a little bit of both. I think a lot of it comes down to not understanding, the audience's state of mind at a particular time.
Sure. Because
some people might not be aware of the benefit that your product or your service actually has, and other people it might not be the right time for them, and that kind of stuff. So that can be a problem in itself. There's then also how you carry that message to people. And I think over and over again, a business thinks, well, these are the people that we normally sell to. You don't develop your audience, you don't segregate or look at different sections of your audience, you don't take into account their state of mind or their need at a particular point in time. and probably more often than not, and this is confusing as hell for most businesses these days, is there are so many channels of communication.
Well, this is it, isn't it? There seems to be a different channel opening every day, and so before we dive in too much to channels, let's strip this thing right back to basics. It doesn't matter if you're SME one-man band, you're multi-million, billion-pound company.
Yep.
What are the fundamentals that you need to get right in any campaign strategy?
So I think before you even start going through the process of working with a consultant or developing a strategy yourself, you need to be really clear. Imagine a cake with 3 layers.
Okay.
Tasty.
Yeah, we all like cake. Yeah.
Or Neapolitan ice cream. 3 different colours.
Or both.
Yeah. You've got, when it comes to strategy, you've really got 3 layers. You've got your business strategy, which is things like, what are your business goals? What are your objectives? What are your targets? You've got your marketing strategy, which underpins the business strategy, and that's how we're going to do this stuff. That can be offline, that can be TV, it can be radio, it can be press, it can be PR, digital, whatever.
Yeah.
Lots and lots of different core communication methods. And then you've got your digital strategy that sits underneath that. And all of those 3 things should align. So ordinarily, when it comes to kind of coming up with strategic campaigns, the very first place you start is, what are our business objectives?
That's it. So you start at the top, and then it filters down into the marketing, and then again into digital.
Even before you start the campaign, it starts way before that.
Yeah, it should do, because digital is a beautiful place to test things out quickly. You can get something out there. You can do a Facebook post and test an offer and engagement, that kind of thing. Flip side of that is, if you don't have objectives, how do you know what you're measuring against?
If you don't have an end goal, how do you get to
it? And this is what I see time and time again, particularly when businesses are working with agencies and they're like, oh, let's go and do some Facebook ads. What are you doing Facebook ads for? What are your core business objectives? Like, do you know what you're prepared to pay per lead? Do you know what you're prepared to pay per sale?
And are you surprised when you go into businesses, certainly of a bigger size, that even they don't have a grasp on those numbers?
Yeah, sometimes they will have this stuff, but it's not connected together. So you'll get like an internal digital or marketing department or an external agency that's doing, effectively, they're kind of patting themselves on the back. That, yay, we did this, this and this. But then when you go and talk to the CEO or the execs, they're like, but that doesn't align to our strategy. Yeah. Our target is brand awareness or campaign activation,
and they've just done something completely different.
And these guys are tinkering around on Instagram. You know what I mean?
Our Instagram looks great, but there's no leads coming through the door.
It's that vanity thing that you see in a lot of smaller businesses of, let's do like a monthly digest newsletter. Well, that's great. You're sending a newsletter out. You're ticking your own box, but actually, have you thought about how many people you're sending to? What action you want them to take? Do you want them to actually do something? And is sending out a monthly email newsletter the most appropriate way of doing that? So it's those little details and the joining up of those 3 different sections of the cake that are really fundamental.
Okay, so we've eaten the cake, we've got it all in place,
and the ice cream,
and we're absolutely stuffed. But yet there's loads more to do, right? We've not even started. This is not even a pre-starter.
Yeah.
So now what?
Now you want to think about your proposition. Like, what is it that you're actually wanting to sell? What is the offer? What's the benefit?
And do many people actually, when you scrutinise it and kind of dive down, do they actually know their proposition?
I don't think a lot of businesses do. I think they think that they do. They think they've got a thing that a market wants, but perhaps they haven't framed it and packaged it in such a way that market, that audience, that new person that stumbled across you can go, that's exactly what I want in my life.
Because if that's not right, if the product or the service isn't right, then the rest of the chain doesn't fall into place, does it?
Because effectively then you're having a conversation with an audience that has no idea what you're saying to them.
You can't market a bad product, can you?
Yeah, I mean, one of the big things about good marketing in general is about working out how to reduce the number of hurdles. And there is that kind of, I don't know whether it's a scientifically proven fact, but there is that thing that the more hurdles that you put in place, the less likely it is that someone will actually take a call to action or do something.
Sure.
Because of the way that we all think. If you make people think too hard, they'll switch off.
Yeah.
So you've got to be able to work out how to create an offer around whatever it is that you do that is just so simple to understand and compelling. And there are so many businesses out there. You can go onto business websites and you'll see like them talking about their features and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
So what? What does it do?
How does that solve my problem?
Exactly.
How does it solve
Yeah.
a problem, and how does it get me a solution as quickly as possible? Because one thing we all are as customers is time poor, right?
Yep.
And so how can we quickly fix problems, and then you can carry on and find the next problem, I guess.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've solved it. We've found a proposition.
Yep.
We've agreed on it. We've talked as a business, and all the shareholders and key stakeholders are aligned.
Yep.
Fantastic. Now what?
Who's it for?
Okay.
Who's the audience? Exactly who is the audience?
And
Which
that's
no one knows ever, do they?
Not
in
really.
terms of creating personas and this is Sally
Yeah.
and she's 35 and this is Tyrone and he's 50 and this is what they do and they're interested in etc.
And try to break it down as much as you can. I worked with a client last year who provided some services to a particular sector of audience in the UK. When we went through the process of like working out what it was that they were offering, what we actually found were there were three different sorts of audience. One was one that was very aware. Another one was transferring from one industry to another, so would need to be made aware of how that industry worked. And the third was completely unaware of anything at all. And if you think about those different stages of awareness, it's a different sort of conversation. You have to frame your offer in a slightly different way.
And then the kind of marketing messages, medium, all that will vary based on those audiences.
Exactly. Right? Now, if they'd have gone with a common message like, our stuff benefits you because blah, the first one, the one that knew the industry already, that were just looking for different service providers, would be like, they're talking down to us.
Yeah.
The second one would be like, well, it sounds interesting, but I don't know how it works. And the third one would be like, what the hell are they talking
super
about?
relevant, and that's the whole thing with marketing, right? Is being as relevant as possible, so you feel like you're talking almost on a one-to-one relationship basis, not that you're being kind of sprayed and prayed to on a mass
Exactly, and there's an art form to how that conversation has to happen through, you know, creative copywriting and the channels that you use and all the rest.
Well, there's that famous poster, isn't there? I don't know who it is of when they were trying to attract soldiers to war, and it's "We need you." You know, and he's pointing out of the poster, and you rightly said it's about attracting and having a one-on-one relationship with someone, and not actually just saying, "Oh, come and join us," or you know, that sales copy is perfect. You're talking to the person, to the customer.
I think a lot of businesses, particularly small businesses, and I completely understand, and I've seen it over and over again, get very nervous about going, but we want to like spray everybody, you know, we
make everyone happy.
Anybody that's got a pulse, we want to market to. The problem is it creates such a dilution, and also particularly if you're spending money on something, you know, whether it's building websites or funnels, or whether it's doing paid advertising or whatever, there's a much more of a chance that a fair proportion of that budget will just get completely wasted. Whereas if you spent the time developing your audience profiles, your avatar, your personas, whatever you want to call them, you would actually find that the kind of pseudo one-to-one conversation that you start to have is much more relevant, and therefore anything that you're spending to promote that conversation is much more likely to get a return.
Sure, and I think it's important for the audience to understand that these fundamentals, it doesn't matter if you're a one-man band or multi-billion-pound company, these are all essential. But actually, if you're a one-man band, you possibly start to do yourself, and I guess you scratch the surface of. But you must be appreciative that there are so many levels, if you like, or back to our cake analogy, there are many different layers within those. So yes, personas you can establish, age, location, and interests. But if you're a multi-billion turnover, you might want to know spending behaviours and online activity and so many more kind of parameters, right?
I mean, stupid examples, particularly with the multinationals, is things like cadence and localization. Like you know, depending on culture, society, trend, the conversation that you would have with a European audience might be completely different from a South American audience or an Australian one.
Yeah.
So you start breaking audiences down into different sections and then fine tuning the kind of conversation.
How niche can you go? Because I guess everyone's got a finite time and normally finite time and finite budget, right?
Yeah.
So I'm thinking at this early end of the scale, actually you can't niche too much. So I'm thinking kind of almost counter-wide. There's going to be different dialects and different slangs, and so how niche would you go?
It's tricky. Sometimes you need to anchor it to like what's further down the list of things that you put in a strategy, which is what channels you're going to use. So it could be that you decide to do a certain amount of research and development up to a point that an audience is a certain size. I mean, for example, if you were looking at doing Facebook advertising at the top of a funnel, like to a broad, unaware audience, you don't really want to be doing less than 100, 200,000 people.
Sure.
So what you don't want to be doing is saying, they've got to have ginger hair and green eyes and one leg, and all of this stuff. And, create an audience that is so like completely niche that if you were to do, for example, Facebook,
anyone called Stokely, maybe,
mass audience,
but it is a balancing act, and the important thing as well is that when you've done that audience research, you never stop refining it.
Interesting. So you got that data, and then you put the data back through the same kind of process. What time period would you suggest people take to refine it? Is it a quarterly thing, a 6-monthly thing, a yearly thing, even more frequent?
I would probably look at it monthly.
Okay.
Even if there's not any work need doing to it. An example, I worked with a guy that had a chain of dental practices.
Yeah.
And he went to a big expo, and we'd done a load of work around like audience profiles and stuff. And he went to a big expo, and he did some speaking stuff and all the rest, and he did a little bit of asking around. And he came back with a few notes, and it was down to things like, what other memberships did these guys have? Because he was doing technology and stuff.
Sure.
What do these other dental owners regularly go to? What are they members of? What are they regularly reading? What subscriptions have they got? And he got a few little bits, and those few little bits, when added to the profile, gave us more targeting options when we were doing some clever paid advertising.
So let's look at some of the tools, or think about some of the tools that people can use. So anyone listening, no matter what your background, budget, kind of skill set, could start to conduct some of this research. Where would they start? Is it a kind of Google Trends? Is it an analytics? Where would it be?
There's lots of different places online where you can get free info. The UK government website's got a great big statistics section.
Perfect. And maybe we can put that in the comments on the bottom of this podcast, and people can go and have a look.
Yeah. And depending on what trade you're in, what industry, lots of business sectors have got their own trade institutions, which regularly publish information.
Yeah.
A lot of it's going to come down to leaning into your existing customer base and actually looking at, is there a trend? Is it regularly that we're selling and reselling to 40-year-old women?
And are you thinking of doing that through analytics, or are you thinking of doing that through a survey or a questionnaire or that kind of survey monkey style thing?
It's got to be a mixture of both.
Okay.
So when I do consulting like that for businesses, I'll lean into online data. I'll look at their existing digital data, and also do quizzes, surveys, offline stuff as well.
Perfect.
And try and aggregate it all together. The beauty of being a smaller business is normally the business owner has got the finger on the pulse with this stuff.
Yeah.
But what you'll find in going through that process is you'll realise, back to why it sometimes fails, is that you might have made assumptions about things.
I guess you find that quite a lot, right? People are making assumptions or hunches, not using the data, but just based on maybe stereotypes or things like that. And it's like, actually, you couldn't be further from the truth based on our
if you looked back, if you had a decent amount of sales data, if you looked back at that sales data and could actually attribute some characteristics, it may be that what you find is the people that most regularly buy from you quickly or repeat buy are this sort of person.
Sure.
And it's only in looking through that stuff that you actually start to see a pattern. It's like, well, whenever we talk to these 50-year-old guys, it takes 3 months to sell stuff. Whenever we speak to these 35-year-old women, they buy tomorrow. well, hang on a minute, why are you spending so much time pushing sales messages at the 50-year-old guys when actually your low-hanging fruit is a slightly different section of your audience?
So, Rob, I appreciate time, and I appreciate that actually there is so much knowledge in there, and we need to get as much of it out as possible. So let's park strategy.
Go on.
And let's go on to funnels and conversion.
Yes.
Okay, because I think that back to the thing we've said a couple of times in this show, like, it doesn't matter what size business you are, every business has a funnel, and every business needs to focus on conversion.
Yep.
And that's something you and your team are incredibly talented at delivering.
Yep.
So let's dive into that a bit more. So typical funnel, how does it work? What can people take away from today to kind of go and set up their own funnel? Is it like a 4-step process, a 5-step process, as many steps as you need?
Very much depends on as many steps as you need, and it's probably for some people that might be scratching their heads and thinking, what the hell is a funnel?
Yeah.
It might be worth just very briefly explaining what that is.
Yeah, dive in.
Effectively, for me anyway, funnels and websites are completely interchangeable words. It is just an online thing that somebody interacts with that has a single purpose. For me, that's the difference between the two. Many websites out there are, big, broad portfolios or brochureware or pages and pages and pages of information, lots of different buttons that you can click and all the rest. Really, a funnel only has one purpose, and that is when somebody comes and visits it, they watch something, they read something, they're attracted by something, and I'm not suggesting you do a big orange button, but somewhere on there is
a clear call to action, right?
A clear call to action,
Yeah.
which has a single purpose. It could be people opting in to get a PDF in their inbox. It could be registering for an online class. It could be, if it's e-commerce, it could be, actually adding it to the cart and then transacting.
Yeah.
There's lots of different funnel types.
And importantly, each step of the funnel, you're essentially selling the next step, right? You're not trying to get them from step 5 to step 1. It's very much a 5 to 4, 4 to 3, as sequential.
Every part of the chain is so important. And, tell me if I'm wrong, but every single one has to be right.
Yeah.
If one's broken, then they don't just jump over it and go to the next one.
You just leak out the side, I guess.
Yeah.
And that's a really nice topic, actually. So many people may finally get the fundamentals of a funnel in place.
Yep.
But then they don't account for leakage, and when bits of the funnel don't perform, it's almost like you need a secondary hopper or a secondary funnel where you can feed them back in.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that. How would that work?
Well, for me, a funnel is an ecosystem. So let's get a little bit abstract. I kind of talked about websites and funnels being interchangeable, but let's get a little bit abstract. A funnel's an ecosystem. That page that somebody came to visit and they did something and clicked an orange button and the next thing happened. That's them entering into the ecosystem. There are businesses out there, I've spoken to some recently, where the e-commerce business is selling stuff online, where they're like, we get 10% conversion. When people come, they click a button, 10% of the people that come buy something off us. And I'm like, what about the other 90%?
Yeah.
Where have they gone?
we don't do anything with them. We just do more Facebook advertising and get more people. I'm like, all right. So, this idea of your ecosystem is, I bet that was music to your ears, right? Because you're like, there's a huge opportunity there to help them. Exactly. The part of this funnel ecosystem is how do we go and find those 90% people that didn't buy?
Yeah, put them into the next hopper and push them back through a process.
Bring them back through.
I guess the funnel, while maybe the same steps, would therefore be slightly different to the original funnel, so they don't hop out again, right?
Could be, yeah.
Or would you go with the same funnel?
No. It very much depends on what it is that you're doing as a business. As I say, if it's something like an online class, it may be that it's time scarce. You didn't opt in for the class this time around. Warning, it finishes in an hour.
Yeah.
If it's e-commerce, it could be, hey, you visited the store, but I noticed you didn't buy. How about 10% off your next order?
Yeah.
There are different ways of framing how you put them into, as you say, that second hopper to incentivize them to come back. Because once you've got
retargeting almost.
Yeah, once you've got their email address and once you've got a transaction from them, they've made a micro commitment to you and you've given them something back, the relationship starts to build and they now exist in your system and you can...
And is it 540 days or something where you can get them on a remarketing list. I'm sure that's roughly the figure where
we could jump down a rabbit hole, and I'm sure you probably do this with Marcus.
With Marcus,
on
yeah,
a new
another,
podcast.
yeah.
The whole thing around retargeting and cookies is shifting and changing.
And I'm sure you guys have done your own podcast, right? And have got your own stuff. And what we'll do also in the bottom of this one is we'll send a link out to that one, because I think that would be a really interesting listen as well. And I'm sure you guys would go for hours.
That's a deep, dark rabbit hole, that one. Yeah.
Fine. Okay, so let's take it back. We've talked about funnels.
Yep.
We've touched briefly on conversion, and we've talked about strategy.
Yeah.
Of all the businesses you've worked with, and there's been hundreds, if not thousands, what is the one thing that you see they fail on time and time again?
I think it comes back to the strategy thing, is jumping too quickly into execution.
Yep.
And getting lost. Spending lots and lots of time doing things that don't match up to a business objective.
So wasting time, wasting budget, trying to achieve something that actually is not aligned.
Jumping too soon into that execution mode is I get it, particularly if you're a small business and you're wanting quick wins and all the rest of it. But even for the bigger businesses that have got targets to hit, going into that execution mode. But if you go in blindsiding yourself to what the approach should be and what the offer should be and the audience and everything else that we've already spoken about, chances are there'll be a frustration. And that frustration normally is, we're 3 months in, we've spent all this money, why is it not doing what it was meant to do?
Sure.
And it normally comes back to that lack of sitting down with a consultant or with a team or on your own if you're a small business, whatever, with a pen and paper and spending some time actually planning what you're going to do before you go and do it.
Definitely. Okay, so very unique, Rob, that you actually wear multiple beanie hats.
Yes.
Okay, it's not just a red one.
Yes.
So now we move away from kind of sales and conversion, all those good things, and let's go into agency life.
Yes.
Because actually something you've been incredibly helpful on our journey here at Quickfire.
Yep.
And you've worked with many other agencies as well. So let's start talking about that. So what kind of work are you doing with agencies? I guess that's with your Rob Sayles hat on, as opposed to, is it Flint, the virtual agency? Or is
Yeah. So Flint's the agency.
And I guess Flint would look after the stuff we've kind of talked about in the first part of this series, or first part of the show. So second part is now Rob Sayles hat on.
Yep.
Should have bought a second beanie. That would have been class. So then,
ta-da!
Yeah.
Underneath.
So then, okay. So you're now consulting on agencies, right? And you're getting under the bonnet, and there must be theme or kind of common theme after common theme after common theme of things you're like, wow, and you've got some great content out there already. What is the common thread in agencies, and where are they falling down?
I think there are two things with agencies. I mean, I've been around agencies since 97, 98. And the face of agencies has changed. Obviously, technology's changed and what you can do has changed, but some fundamentals have always stayed the same. Way back in like late 90s, early 2000s, a lot of agencies were pushing to be quote-unquote full service.
Yeah.
Like, you come to us for anything digital and we can do it.
We had a chat about this on the phone the other day, didn't we? And I've taken it on board, actually, what you're saying.
It's rather than being specialists in a particular thing, there are still agencies out there that try to do lots and lots of different things. But when you step inside and actually look, and this is not to scare businesses that are looking at talking to agencies, but check it out. You step inside an agency and there's like 100 people, but only one of them does a particular
specialism
thing.
Right, yeah.
And you think, well, hang on a minute, you're not really full service if there's like a linchpin in your agency, and if that guy's sick, like
your holiday,
all your
whatever.
SEO's screwed, or you can't run Google ads. So I think one of the things that I see over and over again is agencies that try to overstretch themselves rather than becoming like the go-to guys, the big name specialists in a particular thing.
And why do they do that? Is it because of cash? Or is it because of a kind of fear of, by not offering everything, they may lose the client? Why do people keep following that? It's because it seems logical, right? You become a specialist rather than a generalist, and you are the go-to person. And I always use a sandpit analogy. You just play nicely in the sandpit, right? And you share the sand with all the other agencies.
I think that's what it comes down to. I think as humans, there are some agency owners that are less fun in the sandpit than others.
Yeah.
There's a lot of this. We're marking our homework.
And then throwing sand at others.
Yeah. I mean, I truly believe if you have an agency that's good at one thing, and you've got another agency that's good at another thing, and a third that does another thing, and a client is after those three things, partner.
This is it, and in fact we will touch upon it. I was finding the right guest to do it, and this is perfect. So partnerships are massive, right? And it's a huge reason why we've grown our agency is down to partnerships.
Yep.
And the bit I'm exploring now is the next level of partnerships. So you will have very base level partnerships, right? Where you talk to them possibly once every 6-12 months, and you know of each other, and if the right opportunity comes, but you don't actively seek, right?
Yep.
You then have a next level where you're more prepared to refer work, and you probably speak every quarter or whatever, and then the next level where it's even more frequent, and then I'm now looking at the top of that cone, which would be what I'm calling collectives.
Yep.
Right, which is like active sales activity where you all go after a common target market and you essentially prod different points.
Yeah.
Right, so okay, you go in with a design agency, prods from design, web from web, social from social, video from video, etc., until you find the pain point, and then you get in and you pull the others in. And I think that's a really interesting model, and one that agencies should open their eyes to if they're not already.
Yeah, I think so. And it's happening more and more. I'm seeing more success stories from agencies that do create those partnership roles for each other. Now, whether it's just down to very discrete specialisms like videography and copywriting and brand design, or whether it's broader like, well, we both do paid traffic, but actually we're better at Google and you're better at Facebook, and the clients are talking about needing 2 channels of ads, so why don't we connect the dots?
Yeah.
But yeah, it makes such a difference, and kind of back to your other point about what do I see a lot in agencies, is it reduces operational risk, which is the other thing. I've worked as production manager and ops manager for huge agencies and did all the stuff at Aviva as well. If you remove variables in an agency, you reduce risk.
Yeah.
And when you reduce risk, you increase profitability. So there's less stress if everybody is doing what they need to do rather than feeling stretched in other areas.
Sure.
It then just comes down to, back to your analogy, is effectively the bosses of all these different agencies need to work out how to play nice.
Yeah. And so often they don't, right? Because they're, I don't know, is it insecurity? What is it? What is that magic ingredient which means they don't play nice? Because we see it all the time. They all walk the walk and say, oh yes, we will play nice and let's discuss and have a coffee, and you have a lovely coffee.
Honestly,
and then
I don't know. I've looked at it and I've seen it with agency founders that I've worked with over the years. I don't know whether it's an upbringing thing. I don't know whether it's a scarcity thing. I don't know whether it's a fear of competition thing. I'm not sure what drives that behaviour. All I do know is it's a damn big world. There is a lot of opportunity out there, and just because you live in the same region as another agency and do vaguely the same thing, I find
there's enough to go around, right?
Yeah, I find it really hard when those two agencies are fighting against each other, and I'm kind of looking at the outside and thinking, hang on a minute, if one of you is overstretched on demand and the other one does the same services, why don't you partner and share resources?
Yeah.
And you can make money off the other agencies as well, by obviously referral partnerships. But ultimately, the agency owners who aren't working with their competition are the ones that are going to fail. To be honest with you, that's my opinion.
I think so. I think it's just a slightly narrow-banded way of.
Yeah.
I mean, the only caveat I would put in place is a reputation piece, right? So that's the biggest thing at stake is you start partnering, you start sharing, and the second you start sharing, you have a series of values and things, intangibles, I guess, which you also have to share.
Yep.
It's not just simply as sharing a client. By sharing that client, you are writing an unwritten rule, that is, you share a set of values and a set of communication rules and things like that.
That's true. That's very similar, I think, to what I used to do when I used to scale teams.
Yeah.
Is when you bring people into an agency, you give them a kind of framework, a way of working, whatever you want to call it, and you put them on low risk, quick turnaround work to gauge their effectiveness. Effectively, if we all work in digital, we know what metrics are.
Yeah.
Why can't you assign metrics to your partner or to your staff and then track that? If you put, if you bring a partner in and say, well, hey, let's try this relationship out. We got this project. It's not very long. It's fairly self-contained. This is how we work. This is how you work. Let's just, put it together and make it happen.
Yeah.
That's a good way of actually testing something, and then you scale up from there. I think the problem is when partnerships go, we've got a gazillion-dollar client, and everybody's like, yay, we've got a gazillion-dollar client, let's get on with it. But nobody's actually agreed what the ways of working are going to be, and suddenly, everyone gets so stressed.
Would you say then that the boundaries have to be set from the outset? If you're going to partner, right, this is how we work, this is how you work, this is how it's going to go. You completely agree, and that's the end of it.
Yeah, because again,
to eliminate any risk.
Yeah. You're reducing the variance.
I mean, back to our sandpit analogy, right? If you're going to enter the sandpit, you have to abide by the rules, and the rules are don't throw sand at others and take your shoes off before you get in, right?
Pretty much, yeah.
Similar concept, set the rules of the agency.
I nearly said something then, but I'm not sure whether it get bleeped. Don't do that in the corner.
Yeah. Please refrain from doing that. He's absolutely right. The point is that, you have to abide by the rules, and you have to respect each other. That if someone brings you in to their own sandpit, then I've had this recently, actually. I went to do a pitch, and someone was wanted to sell in an audit, right? And I'm saying, okay, that's great, but I'm not sure that an audit is the right sell at this point. But at the same time, I have to respect, if I'm being taken into someone else's sandpit, it's not for me to go and bulldoze the pitch, right?
Yep.
And say, no, you're not doing audits. It's like, all right, I'll support you with the audit, and then we can do our bit afterwards.
Yeah.
So I think it's just about that commonality, respect, and kind of accepting each other's values.
Yeah.
So appreciative of time. I think there's even more value under the red lid. So let's go into another topic.
Hey.
Best thing. Okay. Over to you. So, if you were to summarize, one thing that anyone could take from today's show, what's it going to be?
One piece of value that someone could take away immediately with them from listening to this.
Don't jump into digital because it looks like the right thing to do. Just spend a little bit of time, like you would planning for a holiday, whatever. Just a little bit of time kind of looking around and working out exactly what it is that you want. And then go into digital.
Fine. So I'm going back into agency land then. And I'm going to go with the next thing, which is around working with remote teams.
Yeah.
Okay, so there is a big fake rule, I guess, that everyone says, to build a successful agency to sell, they all have to be under one roof.
Yeah.
Like
staff.
Total nonsense. I have a very lucky with a wonderful team. Just in case you're watching, love you all. But realistically, right, it doesn't have to be all under one roof. And I believe you've built a very successful virtual agency, which is what we're seeing more and more, right? Actually, they don't have to be UK based.
I think with that decision, you've got to look at your end game.
Yeah.
The challenge with a bricks and mortar agency, and by that I mean somewhere that's got a physical location, it's got various overheads, it's got staff costs, blah 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 blah, is if it plans its activity well, on the books it could become a sellable entity.
Yeah.
A virtual agency that doesn't have certain kind of tangible fixed assets, whatever it might be, is slightly more of a challenge.
Would you say it's more of a lifestyle agency in terms of that's the outcome and difficult to sell?
It depends on whether the agency actually productizes its process to a point that it becomes almost trademarkable. Or
It's niche.
Or some kind of SaaS.
Yeah.
If we develop something effectively that then becomes a model that an acquisition company or a funder or a venture capitalist or whatever would look at and go, well, the books are interesting, don't care about the staff, your process, I want to buy your process. Then again, you've got to look inside your agency and work out what you want the end game to be. You're absolutely right, it could be, and I've met agency owners where they're like, I just want to run it as a lifestyle. I never want more than 10 staff.
Which is fine.
We'll be here until
There's
I
so
retire.
much to be said to that, right? Actually, it's not about headcount is a bit like the kind of turnover is vanity. I've always said headcount is vanity.
Yep.
It doesn't matter if you've got 300 people or 3 people. If you're turning over the same and making the profit, right, is the holy grail. And the other thing I've always said with profit is happy clients as well.
Yeah.
Because again, you can make all the profit in the world, but if you've got unhappy clients, then how do you sleep at night? So I guess those two things are right.
Yep.
You're laughing.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. In terms of automating activity, this is one thing I've always been incredibly impressed when we've spoken.
Yep.
You do a lot of activity, but a lot of it is automated effectively.
Yep.
How do you go through that process? Do you have to kiss a lot of frogs and make a lot of mistakes and almost fail and fail fast to then find the right process?
Yeah, you've kind of got to document what it is that you're doing. I mean, the best way of doing it is as soon as you start writing down some notes or videoing yourself or whatever, so that you start actually creating like a document of, this is how I phone a client, this is how we do this thing, this is how we do that thing. Okay. It's a lot harder when you've got 100 moving parts a year down the line to go, right, let's document everything.
I'm not sure if it might be called black box thinking, but maybe that's something totally different. But I'm sure it's that kind of process manual that every time you do something, or if something new crops up, you solve it, but you also document it and write the process so that the next time someone can just go to the archive and be like, that's how I do that. That's the rule.
Systems thinking and stuff like that's a biggie. Yeah. We did a lot of that stuff in Aviva for a few years. The idea being basically is, rather than having like an emotional connection to the way that your business works, you've got it black and white, or you've got it recorded on video or whatever. You can then start to go, hang on a minute, like, why are we doing that bit? Why don't we replace it? Why don't we replace it with this tool? Or why don't we streamline?
It's like a mathematics equation. If there's something wrong and you figure out what's wrong, you take it out, you put something back in, and then you can change it.
And the other beauty is, as you scale, let's say that you get a junior or apprentice or something else, is like, do you as an agency owner want to spend the next 3 weeks showing an apprentice how to do this, that and the other? Or would you prefer take them out to lunch and then say, right, read that, watch these. If you've got problems with it, your supervisor will have a chat with you, or you can come and have a chat with me or whatever. But like you've got like a back to the ways of working.
It's more efficient, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's the key word. I think
like a guideline or a little Bible.
So that's one thing I think anyone could take from today's show. It is particularly around building process and building scalability. Right? It doesn't matter if you're currently trading out the garden shed, or you're trading out of some swanky office with 35 floors. At the end of the day, start building processes so that you can either remove yourself or free up time, because I think the one thing that we all struggle with and always want more of but can't buy is time. So finding processes that allow us to automate things or allow us to outsource things is the holy grail. Rob, thank you. It's been a really enjoyable catch up. I mean, we could go on for another 5 hours, right?
Could,
but at the same time,
can't.
No, we can't. We can't until you get to series 10, and then it's just Rob all the way.
Lots of different hats.
No, I really appreciate you coming in. Thank you.
Thanks for having me.
Where can people that have listened to the show and watched the show, and I'm sure hopefully got a lot of value out of it, where can they go to find out more about you and your services?
robsayles.com.
Okay.
Which I'll leave you guys to put a link in.
Yeah, please do. Yeah.
Obviously, there's the Y in there somewhere. I'm on Facebook. I'm on LinkedIn.
Perfect. So Facebook, LinkedIn, or go to the website. We'll put all those kind of details in the comments. You can have a look. Check Rob out. He's a great guy, as you've seen, full of value. And thank you. Thank you for coming on. I hope everyone's found it useful. And I look forward to seeing you on the next show. Thanks again.
Cheers.
Thanks, Rob.
Thank you.
Cheers.